Maya and Sungmin thought the gala was their triumph, but the celebration will be short-lived. When two people will come together to make sure they destroy everything. Will it just be Ha-eun and Sebastian? Or are they in for a very heartbreaking surprise? Maya and Sungmin will have to work together to emerge victorious. If this story already has you on the edge of your seat, then smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell right now, because this part 2 is going to take everything you think you know about this story and turn it completely upside down. Now, before we go any further, we've got a gift for you. Click on the link in the description below to join our waitlist for your free ebook, How to Attract a High-Value Man Without Chasing. Now, let us get back to the story. The weeks after the gala were not simple. Nothing between Maya Carter and Sungmin Kwan had ever been simple. And this was not going to become simple just because a kiss had happened in front of a room full of witnesses. Because, here is the thing about a kiss. A kiss is not a conversation. A kiss is not a decision. A kiss is not the specific and patient work that two people have to do when one of them has spent 3 years having her instincts dismantled, and her love used as collateral, and her devotion mistaken for a resource that could be drawn down, without limit and without consequence. A kiss was a beginning. And Maya Carter was not entirely sure she was ready for what came after beginnings. Sungmin understood this. He did not love it, but he understood it. He had admitted to himself, finally and completely, that he was in love with this woman. He had admitted it to Min Jae, who had responded with the triumphant enthusiasm of a man who had been saying so for months and was deeply satisfied to be right. He had admitted it to the Seoul Knight outside his office window on the evenings. He sat with it and let it be what it was, without trying to file it under something more manageable. He was in love with Maya Carter, and she was not ready. She was still doing the things she had been doing since the elevator, since the meeting, since the hallway where their hands touched, and they both stopped walking. She was still taking every warm thing he offered her and holding it at a slight distance, still watching it for the calculation she had learned to expect. Still waiting, in the quiet hours, for the version of Sungmin that would eventually show her the ledger, the one where all the kindness had a price attached. She was not doing it on purpose. She was doing it the way you do things when experience has been a more thorough teacher than you wanted it to be. He had asked her about dinner with his parents, who had come around from their initial reluctance, faster than he had anticipated, because they were parents who understood their son, and their son had never, in 30 years of existing, looked at any woman the way he looked at this one. That was data no parent could argue with indefinitely. They wanted to meet her. They had said so. Sungmin had promised them it would happen. But every time he brought it up, something got in the way. The first time she said she had work she needed to finish. He said of course and did not push. The second time she said she was not feeling well and he said take care of yourself and meant it and did not push. The third time she looked at him and said she just needed a little more time, and something moved across her face that was so honest and so afraid that he had to look away from it for a moment, because it cost him something to see it. He said of course. He said whenever you are ready. He went back to his office and sat at his desk and told himself to be patient and meant it completely. And Maya went back to her office and sat at her desk and hated herself a little bit for being afraid of something that had done nothing except be exactly what it appeared to be. On a Tuesday morning, she found him before the day had properly started, before the building had filled and the corridors had the noise of people moving through them with purpose. He was already at his desk. He was always already at his desk. She had noticed this about him early, that he arrived before anyone else and left after most people, and the hours in between he spent with the specific, focused attention of a man who genuinely loved what he had built. She stood in the doorway. She had not planned to stop there. She had been on her way somewhere. But she stopped because he had not noticed her yet, and she had approximately 4 seconds of watching him before he felt her presence, the way he always felt her presence, like a shift in the air, and she used those 4 seconds the way she always used them. She looked at him, the golden hair catching the morning light from the window, the breadth of his shoulders, even when he was simply sitting reading something on his screen, the way his jaw sat, the way his hands looked resting on the desk. She looked at all of it and she felt everything she had been telling herself for weeks that she was not feeling, and she thought, "You enormous fool, Maya Carter. You are so in love with this man." He looked up. The smile arrived before he had made any decision about it. That was the thing she had noticed first. With Sebastian, the smile was always deployed, aimed, timed. With Sungmin, the smile just happened. Like a reflex. Like sunlight. She was there, and then he was smiling, and there was no gap between the two things. "You are here early," he said. "My mother is coming to Korea," she said. She had not planned to lead with that either. She had planned to say good morning and ask about the security report she was waiting on. But apparently her mouth had decided this was the more pressing item. He leaned back slightly. Looked at her. "Is she?" "She says she is coming to see me," Maya said. And the smile was already at the corner of her mouth because she knew exactly what she was about to say and exactly how he was going to take it. "But we both know she is coming to see the Korean man who gave me a job. The one she claims I am in love with." Sungmin looked at her with the specific look he got when she said something that landed in his chest, and he did not want her to see how directly it landed. "She cannot be all that wrong," he said. Maya tilted her head. Pretended to consider this. "Careful," she said. "I am sure you are in love with me," he said. He said it with a smirk. The one that appeared when he was saying a true thing in a way that gave him distance from the truth of it. But his eyes were not smirking. His eyes were doing something else entirely, and they both knew it, and neither of them was going to acknowledge it at 7:45 in the morning in a professional setting. Maya looked at him for 1 second too long. "I am going to go get more coffee," she said. She left. She got to the end of the corridor, and stood at the coffee machine, and stared at it while it worked, and thought about the way he had looked at her, and thought about how easy it was to be in a room with him, and thought about how that easiness was the most frightening thing she had encountered in a long time. Because with Sebastian, nothing had ever been easy. Everything had been work. Everything had required management and careful navigation, and the constant low-level vigilance of a woman who had learned that the temperature of a room could change without warning. She had become so accustomed to that vigilance that its absence felt suspicious, felt like something she was missing, like a threat she had not yet identified. What if the easy was real? What if it was just what it was? She carried her coffee back to her office. She sat down and opened her laptop and told herself to work, and did not entirely manage it for the first 15 minutes. Sebastian Reyes was consuming himself. He had replayed the gala so many times in the weeks since it happened that the images had worn grooves in him. He could run it like a film. The doors opening, and Maya walking in. The gown. The man beside her. The way she had been laughing at something that man said with the full version of her laugh. The version Sebastian had not heard in a very long time because the full laugh required something he had spent 3 years systematically taking from her. And then the ring. He still heard the sound of it hitting the floor. He still felt the exact temperature of the room in that moment. The silence. The way everyone turned. The specific quality of her voice when she said what she said in front of all of those people. He had never heard her voice do that before. That clarity. That absolute absence of the hesitation he had always relied on. He had decided, because deciding was the only way to survive it, that she was the villain. She was a cheat. She had replaced him before she had even properly left. She had taken everything he gave her. The city, the job, the house, the ring, and she had used it as a launchpad to a better option, and then had the audacity to make him look like the problem in a room full of people. She was ungrateful. She was disloyal. The slap had been an act of aggression against a man who had done nothing but sacrifice for her. He held on to this version of events with both hands. He did not examine it too closely. The thing about the version of events where you are entirely blameless is that it requires a great deal of maintenance. It requires you to constantly repave over certain memories before they become visible. It requires effort. And Sebastian Reyes was beginning to find the effort expensive. But underneath all of it, underneath the constructed outrage and the wounded pride and the careful editing of his own history, there was something else sitting quietly. Something he kept running into in the dark. Yuna. She had walked out of that gala without looking at him once. She had brought him there, which he understood now in a way he had not fully understood in the moment, and he had walked away from her to make a scene over a woman he claimed meant nothing. He had done to Yuna in front of Seoul's most connected people what he had spent 3 years doing to Maya in private. He had made her feel like a placeholder, like something he had brought along and could put down when something more interesting came along. Yuna Shin had never been placed in that position by anyone in her life. He needed to fix it. Ji-ho, Yuna's brother had called him. Carefully. The way Ji-ho did everything, without unnecessary drama, just the facts delivered in a tone that conveyed exactly what he expected the person on the other end to do about them. He said simply that his sister had not been at the company in over a week, and that he imagined Sebastian understood why. Sebastian said he was already planning to go to her. He meant it. Yuna Shin had been sitting in her apartment for over a week since the gala, trying to identify what she was feeling and not making any progress she was satisfied with. She had never cared about Sebastian Reyes. She had been very clear with herself about this. He was at the company. He was available. He was handsome in the specific, uncomplicated way of a man who had always been told so and had organized his entire personality around the fact he had been a distraction, a pleasant enough one, nothing that was ever going to cost her anything. So why was she sitting in her apartment thinking about him? Why did the image of him crossing that room keep arriving? Not the image she wanted to have, which was the image where she was unbothered and had already moved on and had very little memory of his face. The image she kept getting was the one where she was standing there, and he was already 3 steps away, and her champagne glass was in her hand, and her smile was still on her face for the room, and underneath the smile, something had gone. Quiet in a way she did not like. She had felt something. She did not know when it had started, or how she had failed to notice it arriving. She was usually meticulous about noticing these things early enough to make a decision about them before they made decisions about her. But apparently somewhere between the working late at the office and the going to that gala as his +1, she had started to feel something she had not authorized. And now it was gone. And she was sitting in her apartment not going to work. Jiho called. She told him she needed time. He understood. He always understood with her in the specific way of a brother who has watched his sister be untouchable for long enough to know that the times when she was most quiet were the times when something had actually landed. She sat with the silence. The knock came. She stood. She walked to the door. She opened it. And her eyes did something she had absolutely not given them permission to do. They lit up. She had them under control in under a second. She arranged her face into the specific expression she had been wearing her whole life when she needed a room to see nothing. Flat, cool, present, but unreachable. Sebastian Reyes was standing in her doorway, looking like a man who had rehearsed this and was not entirely confident about any of it. Yuna, he started. I was wrong. I know. Wrong. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The word landed with the full weight of everything she had been not saying for 8 days. You embarrassed yourself. And you put me in it with you. In front of everyone. For a woman you claim you have no interest in. The anger was building as she heard herself say it. As if the saying of it was making it real, in a way the thinking of it had not. She had chosen him. In a room full of options, she had put him on her arm and walked into that gala, and he had looked across the room and made her invisible. You are right, he said. She had expected argument. She had prepared for argument. His agreement disarmed her in a way she did not appreciate, and she covered it by not moving. I am completely wrong, he said. And I am not here to give you reasons for it. There are no reasons that change what it looked like or what it was. Then why are you here? She said. He looked at her. And here is where you had to understand something about Sebastian Reyes. He was not a good man. He was not a loyal man. He was not a man who had earned the face he was about to make. But the face was extraordinary. It was the specific combination of sincerity and vulnerability that had been refined over years of practice on women who were looking for a reason to believe what they wanted to believe. It was his greatest skill, and it was completely divorced from anything true. Everything took me by surprise, her and that man, he said. And when she called me a cheat, in front of every person in that city who matters, and I lost my head completely. I had been carrying 3 years of what she did to me. The lies, the running to other men every time because she wanted attention, all of it. And my hurt came out in that room in the worst possible way. He paused, looked down for a moment, then back at her. But none of that justifies why I did what I did to you. I did what I did to you because I am a fool who could not see clearly what was right in front of him. You wanted me there with you. You chose to bring me when you did not have to, and I walked away from you because I was angry. Yuna said nothing. But I want you to know that you are everything to me, he said. You have always been the one. And I know I do not have the right to stand here and ask you to simply accept that. I know what it looked like. I just need you to know that what I felt at that gala when I saw her had nothing to do with love. It was just the feeling of being betrayed. It was the pain I felt because I wasted my time on her, instead of investing it on you. He held her gaze. Who I actually love is standing directly in front of me. And I have been too much of a fool to say it properly until now. The silence stretched out between them. Yuna looked at him. She was looking for the lie. She had been trained for this her whole life by people who wanted things from her family and dressed the wanting up as affection. She was good at finding it. She almost found it. The problem was the almost. The problem was that some part of her had been sitting in this apartment for days, wanting this exact conversation. And when you want something badly enough, you start to bend your own standards of evidence. I need time, she said finally. She said it in the voice that gave nothing away. The one that protected her. Of course, he said. Simple. No protest. He nodded once, and he left. She stood at the door after it closed. She stood there for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone and called Ji-ho. I will try to come in tomorrow, she said. Ji-ho's voice warmed immediately. He asked if Sebastian had come. She said yes. He asked if she was feeling better. She said she was. He told her he was glad, and did not say anything else, because he knew her, and he knew when she had made a decision, and when a conversation was over. He was happy she was happy. Privately, he had never believed that what she felt for his friend was anything more than novelty. But novelty was enough, if it made her happy, and her brother loved her enough to keep his opinions about her choices to himself. He hung up smiling. Yuna put her phone down. She stood at her window and looked at the Seoul evening, and told herself that time was exactly what she needed, and that she had handled this correctly, and that everything she felt was proportionate and manageable. She almost believed it. Sebastian walked home. He had the particular feeling of a man who has just delivered a performance, and is not entirely sure how it landed. Yuna had not slammed the door. She had said she needed time. In his experience, time meant softening, and softening meant the thing he wanted was eventually going to happen. He could work with time, but underneath that calculation was the weight that had been sitting on him since the gala and had not shifted. No Maya. An apartment in Seoul that felt smaller every day. He sat in it. A future that had no shape to it at all. He had built everything around the architecture of Maya's loyalty, and she had walked out of it, and he had been standing in the rubble ever since with no plan. He turned the corner onto his street, and stopped. There was a woman standing outside his building. The limousine parked at the curb told him something immediately. It was the kind of car that announced a category of wealth that Sebastian had spent his entire adult life trying to be adjacent to without ever quite arriving. Long and black and occupying the curb with the unbothered confidence of something that had never needed to justify its presence anywhere. The woman standing beside it was looking at her phone. She looked up when she heard him, and Sebastian Reyes, who had been walking home sad and depleted, and without a plan for his immediate future, felt the specific internal rearrangement that happened whenever money and beauty occupied the same space near him. He straightened. He walked toward her. Hey, beautiful, he said, with the smile. Are you lost? Ha-eun Park looked at him. The expression on her face was not what he had aimed for. It was the expression of a woman who has itemized the contents of a room and found them slightly below the minimum requirement, but has decided to proceed anyway because she does not have a better option available. Did she really have to work with this? She did not respond to his opening. She reached into her bag and took out her phone and turned it toward him without preamble. Sebastian's face did something it had not done since the night he watched Maya walk into that gala on another man's arm. It went completely still. The picture was from the gala. Maya and Sungmin. The dance floor. The kiss. The specific way he was holding her, as though she was something worth holding carefully. You know her, Ha-eun said. It was not a question. Yes, he said. His voice had changed entirely. The warmth gone. Just the flatness of a wound being pressed. I do. He looked at Ha-eun. Do you know her? No, Ha-eun said. But I know him. He is my ex. Something moved through Sebastian's face. The recognition of a person who has just found someone standing on the same side of the same loss. She is my ex, he said. My ex-fiancé. Ha-eun looked at him for a moment. I have a particular problem, she said, with women who collect what belongs to me, and men who are too cheap to hold on to what they have. She put her phone away. So I intend to collect something better from both of them. Something that will cost them considerably more than they could ever cost us. Sebastian looked at her. And you need me for this. You are going to help me, she said. And why exactly would I do that? The irritation was showing. He did not like being given instructions, and he especially did not like being given instructions by women who had not yet done anything to earn the right to give them. Ha-un looked at him with the patience of a woman who has already accounted for this exact reaction in her planning. Because I was at that gala, she said. Her voice carried no heat. It was a simple recitation of observable facts. I watched her slap you. I watched him have you walked out. And I watched them stand in the middle of that room and celebrate after you left. She tilted her head very slightly. I do not allow people to make a fool of me. Do you? Sebastian said nothing. What is in it for me? He said eventually. Ha-un turned slightly toward the limousine. That car you have been staring at since you turned the corner, she said, would be yours. And considerably more than that. Sebastian looked at the car. Then at her. I am asking you to work with me, she said. The smile was small and cold and entirely self-possessed. You get your revenge. And you get more money than you have accumulated in the last 3 years combined. This is where the real drama begins. Can you tell me what Ha-un's plan is? And why she needs Sebastian? Do you think Maya was too slow to trust Sung-min? Or do you understand why a woman who gave everything to the wrong man would be terrified to give anything to the right one? Tell us in the comments. Also, let me use this opportunity to invite you to join our membership. Be one of our elites in Seoul and Seoul Afro Stories community. You should know we have perks for those in our secret circle. If you want to join, click the link in the description below and be part of us. Anyways, let us get back to the story. Sebastian could not believe his luck. He sat in his apartment that evening with Ha-un's card between his fingers and turned it over and thought about everything she had told him. Not everything. She was precise that way. She had given him the shape of the plan, enough to understand it, not enough to execute any part of it without her. She was not the kind of woman who handed people more information than they needed. The shape of her plan was this. Maya and Sung-min were close. Dangerously close for the kind of damage Ha-un intended. The closeness needed to be disrupted. The trust needed to be fractured. And Sebastian was the specific instrument she had chosen for the fracturing, because he was the one person whose reappearance in Maya's life could be made to mean something it did not actually mean. She told him that he had to find a way to reach Maya. He had told Ha-un after she gave him the plan, in the specific tone of a man who objected in principle while already calculating in practice. I am not going to beg Maya for anything. Ha-un had looked at him with the expression she seemed to reserve specifically for things she found tedious. Is the money still important to you? She said. He had said nothing. Then you will do what needs to be done, she said. And that was the end of the conversation. But then the problem became access. Maya had blocked him everywhere with the thoroughness of a woman who had made a decision and was not interested in revisiting it. Every number gone. Every platform gone. Every route that had ever existed between them simply closed. He told Ha-un he could not reach her. Hae-un told him that was not his problem to solve. She would have Maya followed. She would find the patterns, the places she went consistently, the rhythms of her days. Sebastian would simply need to be in the right location when the moment presented itself. All he had to do was wait. Esther Carter arrived in Korea on a Saturday morning. Maya stood at the arrivals gate and watched her mother come through the doors with her small rolling suitcase and her reading glasses pushed up on top of her head, where she had put them to look at her boarding pass and forgotten to put them back down. Esther moved through spaces the way she had always moved through them. Slowly. Thoroughly. The eyes going over everything and missing nothing. She saw Maya and the whole face changed. She walked toward her daughter and pulled her into a hug and held on for a long moment without saying anything. Just held on the way mothers hold on when they have been waiting to do this for longer than they are going to admit. She pulled back and looked at Maya's face. You look well, she said. From Esther, this was not a small thing. Esther only said things she meant. Maya took her to the apartment and watched her mother walk through it, the way she had watched her walk through every important space in their lives. Slowly. Room by room. Touching nothing. Just looking. Taking in the quality of the light, and the quality of the furniture, and the quality of the care that had gone into making it a place where a person could feel at home, rather than just housed. Esther said nothing for a long time. Then she said, Tell me about this man. Maya made tea. They sat at the kitchen table the way they had always sat when there were things to be said. Cups in front of them. The particular quality of silence between two women who have been honest with each other for long enough that the silence itself has learned to carry information. "He is my boss, Mum," Maya said. "I know what he is," Esther said. "I said tell me about him." Maya looked at her tea. "He is," she started. And then she stopped, because there was no small version of what Sung Min Kwan was, and she did not know how to give her mother the large version without it sounding like more than she was ready to call it. "He is good," she said finally. "He is just very straightforwardly good." Esther looked at her. "Invite him over," she said. "Mum." Maya said it with the tone she had been using on her mother since she was 14. The tone that meant, "I know exactly what you are doing. I thought you were here to see me." "I am here to see you," Esther said simply. "I also want to see your friend. The man that has been making you smile." "Mum, it is not like that." Esther looked at her with the specific expression of a woman who has known her daughter for 24 years and has never once been successfully deflected by that sentence. "Make it like that," she said. "You are an adult. You know the good from the bad. And this Sung Min," she said his name carefully, the way she always said unfamiliar names, giving each syllable the full consideration it deserved. "He has been nothing short of amazing. Do not lose him, because you are still healing from a pain you caused yourself." Maya's jaw tightened. "I did not cause Sebastian," she said. The words came out with more heat than she intended. "I loved him. I was rewarded with treachery." "It is not a crime to love," Esther said. Her voice was not hard. It was the voice she used when she was saying something true that she had been sitting with for a long time and had chosen her moment carefully. "But it is a crime to lose yourself for love. And it is more of a crime to blame others for choices you chose to make." "Mum, I told you I did not trust him before you went to Seoul," Esther continued quietly. "I was not wrong. You did not listen. You went through the pain yourself. And I will not sit here and watch you go through the regret of not choosing the right person when the right person is standing in front of you." "Why is he the right person?" Maya said. She heard the defensiveness in her own voice and hated it. "Because he gave me this house?" Esther looked at her in the full way, the way that meant she was about to say the thing she had actually come to say. "No," she said quietly. "Because since he entered your life you have not made a single complaint." The kitchen went very still. Maya sat with that. She turned it over, looked at it from one angle and then another. Since the night Sung Min got out of that car, she had called Esther with relief, with gratitude, with the particular warmth of someone who was, slowly and carefully, beginning to feel safe. She had not called with something going wrong. She had not called at 2 in the morning with the specific exhaustion of a woman who has been managing a man's feelings at the expense of her own. She had not called to process or to cry, or to find words for something she did not have words for yet. Not a single complaint. "You have been completely comfortable," Esther said, "and happy, since he stepped into your life. And that for me is right." She reached across the table and covered Maya's hand with hers. "You deserve someone right in your life. You have always deserved that." Maya looked at her mother's hand on hers. The knot that lived below her ribs. The one she had been carrying since Seoul, since the snow, since the door that would not open, loosened. Not completely, but enough to breathe through. She had been falling in love with Sung Min from the elevator. She knew this. She had known it for months, and she had been walking around with it like something fragile she was afraid to put down in case she dropped it. In case it turned out to be breakable. In case this turned out to be just another version of a story she had already lived through once at a price she could not afford to pay again. But Esther was right. She had not made a single complaint. She was going to say yes to the parents' dinner. She was going to walk into his office and tell him she wanted to go. She was going to tell him she loved him, because she did love him, and she was done letting fear spend her money. She thanked her mother. She kissed her cheek. She told her she had work to finish. The security system at Sung Min's company had been generating persistent warnings, a recurring vulnerability that someone kept probing. And Sung Min's friend, Min Jae, had asked her specifically to close the breach once and for all before the end of the week. The information in that system was worth millions, and they couldn't afford it to be in the hands of the wrong person. She needed quiet to finish the analysis properly. She could not concentrate at home. Her mother was home, and the apartment was full and lovely and warm. And the particular pleasant noise of someone who loved you existing in your space was exactly the kind of noise that made focusing on anything technical, completely, impossibly. She needed to step out, and when she wanted to step out, she usually went to the coffee shop around the corner. Her favorite one. The one she had found in the early months in Seoul, when she needed somewhere that had no Sebastian in it. She went there consistently. It had become hers, in the small and private way that certain places become yours. She kissed Esther's cheek again before she left. She did not see him until he was already beside her table. She had been in the work for 40 minutes. Deep in it. The kind of deep where the coffee goes cold without you noticing, and the sounds of the cafe flatten into white noise, and there is only the pattern you are trying to read. She had been turning the data over and over because something about it was not sitting right, and she could not yet articulate why. She felt a presence. She looked up, and the coffee shop became a very different place. Sebastian Reyes was standing beside her table, with an expression on his face that she had seen before but never quite like this. Stripped of the specific performance he usually ran when he was managing her. No calculated warmth, no deployed charm. Just a face that looked like it had been doing the thing faces do when a person has been living alone inside their own head for an extended period, and the rent has gotten too high. He looked diminished. That was the word. He looked like less of himself than he had ever looked, and 3 years ago that would have activated something in her immediately. The fixer. The softener. The woman who loved him, and therefore interpreted every sign of his difficulty as something she could help with if she just gave enough. She felt none of that now. She felt the distant ache of recognition, of a familiar shape, the way you feel when you see something that used to mean a great deal to you and no longer does, and the absence of the feeling is neither good nor bad, just true. She moved to close the laptop and leave. Maya. His voice was quiet. Not the voice he used to manage her. Something underneath that. Something that had been stripped of the layer that usually came first. Just her name. Flat and genuine and tired. Please, just, please. She stopped. She looked at him. Not because she was reconsidering anything. Not because hearing him say her name in that voice had moved her back toward him in any direction that mattered. She stopped because she was tired of the weight she had been carrying since the snow. The specific anger of a woman who gave everything and got lies. She had been carrying it for months, and she could feel it costing her things she did not want to keep paying. She could feel it in the way she held herself sometimes with Sung-min, the way she took a step back just before she would have taken a step forward. She was done carrying it. Not for Sebastian. For herself. She sat back down. Say what you need to say, she said. He sat across from her. He did not look at her immediately. He looked at his hands on the table, and she had time to observe the way he looked, and to notice that the man across from her, and the man she had loved for years, were occupying the same face, and yet not the same person, in any way she could identify. She could not locate the feeling she used to have when she was near him. She had looked for it. Some trace of what had been there. It was not there. It had gone somewhere, and she had no interest in going to find it. I have had a lot of time, he said, to sit with what I did. He looked up at her. And honestly, I'm not here to play the victim. I'm here to tell you that I'm sorry. Maya said nothing. She was listening. She was not moved, but she was listening. I know that you gave up everything for me, he said. Your career, your savings, your entire city. And you gave it all up because you loved me. And I was not the best person. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm trying to tell you I can see where I was wrong. He stopped. And I know I wasn't loyal to you. I was always with someone else. And I would tell you it was in your head. I gaslit you for most of our relationship. He held her gaze. So Maya, I'm sorry. None of it was in your head. You were right about all of it. I made you feel like you were losing your mind for being right. And I am so sorry. He slid off the chair. He was on one knee on the floor of the coffee shop. Maya looked at him down there. Something moved through her. Not love. Not the version of love that had lived in her for 3 years. Something smaller and more specific. The ache of a truth, arriving too late. The truth was real. She could hear that it was real, and she had waited a long time to hear it. It was just arriving in the wrong coffee shop, in the wrong country, at a point in her life where she had already made other arrangements for what she was doing with herself. I am sorry for all of it, he said. For the ring. For Seoul. For every morning I made you feel like your presence was an inconvenience. I am genuinely sorry. She looked at him on that floor. She thought about Sung Min, about the work permit that had materialized in 4 days after a year of broken promises, about the way he looked at her in the elevator, about the parents' dinner she had been postponing, and was going to stop postponing, about the things she was going to tell him when she saw him, about the specific difference between a man who builds walls around you and calls it love, and a man who opens every door and asks for nothing except your time. Get up, she said. He looked up at her. Get up, she said again, steadily. I am going to say something to you that I think you need to hear, and I would prefer to say it to your face. He got up. He sat back in the chair. She looked at him. I forgive you, she said. Not because you have earned it, but because I am done carrying the weight of what you did. It is too heavy, and it has been costing me things I am not willing to pay anymore. She kept her voice even. Not cold. Not warm. Clear. I am not coming back. I am not reconsidering anything about my life, or who is in it. I have moved on in ways that I did not know were possible when I was sitting in that snow. And I need you to know that. Not to hurt you. Just as a fact that you should have. Sebastian looked at her. For one unguarded second, something real moved across his face. Something that was not performance and not calculation. Something that looked almost like the specific pain of a man who has just understood, too late and too completely, what he had in his hands and what he did with it. I know, he said quietly. Almost. She almost felt sorry for him. Almost was not enough. She looked back at her laptop. I need to finish my work, she said. Take care of yourself, Sebastian. He stood. He left. She watched the door close behind him, and then she looked at her screen, and she went back to the problem, and she stayed with it until she had the answer she was looking for. What she did not know was that 2 pictures had been taken in that coffee shop in the last 20 minutes. One by a person sitting in the far corner who had been there before Sebastian arrived, and had watched the whole thing and had chosen their angle carefully. An angle that showed Sebastian on one knee, and Maya's face during the moment when the ache had moved through her. The specific moment where her expression was softer than the conversation deserved. The angle that told a story that was not the story. And one by a person who had absolutely nothing to do with Ha-un. A person whose photograph was going to become a very specific problem for Sebastian Reyes in ways he had not anticipated. Maya finished her work. She packed her laptop away. She sat with the remains of her cold coffee, and she thought about what she was going to say to Sung Min, and she felt the warm, terrifying thing moving through her chest, and she let it move. She was ready. Sung Min had been thinking about her all evening. He was at his desk after hours. Seoul outside his window doing what it always did. Building itself out of light and movement, and the particular energy of a city that had never once agreed to slow down. He had been going over in his mind the conversation he needed to have. Not the patient version, the actual one. The one where he told her that he understood her fear and had no intention of adding to it, and was going to keep being exactly who he was, for exactly as long as it took, because he was not going anywhere, and he needed her to know that. He was not going to ask about the parents' dinner again for now. He was going to tell her he loved her. Not as a demand or a pressure, just as information she deserved to have so she could make her own decisions from an accurate position. His phone buzzed. He picked it up without urgency. The image loaded. He sat very still, Sebastian on one knee. The coffee shop blurred around them. Maya's face above him, soft with something he could not read from this angle, and the not being able to read it was the worst part. He could not tell what she was feeling. He could not tell if the softness was grief or reconsideration or something he did not have a word for yet. The image was designed to be unreadable, and it had succeeded. He put the phone face down on the desk. He sat with it. He sat with it for a long time, and in the sitting with it, something unexpected arrived alongside the heartbreak. A memory. How Ha-un stood in that corridor telling him he had used her. The word used delivered with the bitterness of someone who had loved without the love going anywhere, and had eventually been told in the gentlest possible terms that it was not going to. He had felt bad about Ha-un in the abstract way. The way you feel bad about something that was your fault, but that you cannot fully inhabit emotionally because you have never felt the thing you caused in another person. He could inhabit it now. He understood now, sitting here with his phone face down on his desk, and this picture behind the glass of it, what Ha-un had felt. The specific suffocation of loving someone so much that their face is the first thing in your mind when you wake, and the last thing when you finally sleep. The specific vulnerability of building something in your chest around a person who may or may not be building anything around you. The specific terror of a photograph that confirms a fear you had been hoping was not a real fear. He had caused that in Ha-un. He had never understood what he was causing. For a brief and genuine moment he pitied her. For the first time, not as an abstract. As a real woman who had felt what he was feeling right now, and had felt it because of him. Because now, even in so much pain, Maya was the only person he wanted to be around. That was how sad it was. And now he could understand how Ha-un must have felt when he ended things with her. The pity lasted a moment. Then he reached for the whiskey. He poured a glass. He sat with it untouched. He looked at the Seoul night, and the phone face down on the desk, and the feeling in his chest that had no clean name, and he sat with all of it together. The door opened. Min Jae-oh walked in. He had been about to make a slight joke about drinking so early. Min Jae was always about to make a joke. His particular gift was the perfectly timed observation that made you laugh before you had decided to laugh. He took one look at Sung Min's face, and the joke he had been about to say makes somewhere else entirely. He pulled a chair over without being asked. He sat down. "Talk," he said. Sung Min turned the phone over. He pushed it across the desk. Min Jae picked it up. He looked at the picture. He was quiet for a moment. He put the phone down and picked up the bottle and poured himself a glass. "Maybe it is not what it looks like," he said. "Maybe?" Sung Min said. He did not sound like a man who believed in maybe. "She told you she was not ready," Min Jae said. Not accusing. Just turning it. "Maybe she was being honest about that." "She was being honest," Sung Min said. He picked up his glass. Looked at it. "That is the thing. I believed every single thing she told me. I believed she was not ready. I believed she was still healing. I believed all of it." He set the glass down without drinking. "I just did not understand that not ready, and still somewhere else, were the same thing." Min Jae was quiet for a moment. She was never going to be over him, he said, if she was still this available to him. "No amount of patience from you changes what that picture is." "I know," Sung Min said. "Then let it go," Min Jae said. He said it the way he said things when he meant them. Without drama. Without performance. The specific gentleness of a friend who is saying a hard thing because it is the true thing. If she is not where you are, let her go. Hurting from a distance is still hurting. "You do not understand," Sung Min said. His voice was very quiet. "I will see her every single day. She works for me, and every single day my heart is going to break all over again, and I cannot do anything about that." Min Jae thought about this for a moment. "Then fire her," he said. "If that makes it easier." Sung Min looked at him. The look was direct and complete, and entirely without ambiguity. "No," he said. The word arrived with a certainty that surprised even him. How absolute it was. How there was no version of that sentence that he was willing to occupy. "Never. She is one of the best cybersecurity experts I have ever had in this company. I love her too much to pretend her skill exists, because I was attracted to her. That would be dishonest and it would be wrong, and I will not do it." Min Jae nodded slowly. They drank. The Seoul night continued outside. The whiskey was good. The silence between them was the particular silence of two men who had been in each other's lives long enough that not speaking was its own kind of conversation. The kind of silence that means I am here, and I know, and there is nothing more to say right now, and that is enough. Sung Min stared at the city. Min Jae looked at his glass, and said nothing. Maya dismissed Sebastian from her mind before she reached the end of the street. Not with effort. The dismissal was simply what happened when she checked inside herself, and found that the conversation, while real in its own way, had produced nothing she needed to carry. She had put down what she had come to put down. She was done. She walked home thinking about the security analysis. Because something was wrong with it, and she had found it just after Sebastian left, and she had been sitting with it ever since, underneath everything else. The breach was behaving in a way that external breaches did not behave. The targeting was too specific, the knowledge of the system's architecture too exact. External actors probing a system guessed at weaknesses based on standard vulnerabilities. They tried things. They tested responses. They worked from the outside, toward the inside. This was working from the inside out. Whoever was doing this knew exactly where to go because they had been inside the system before, or were still inside it. She got home, and the apartment smelled of whatever Esther had found a way to cook with the ingredients available. And her mother was in the kitchen looking entirely at home, and Maya sat down and let herself be held by that for a moment. Before she started talking, she told Esther about Sebastian, the coffee shop, the knee, the apology, the way she had felt nothing. She had not expected to feel. The way putting it down had felt exactly like putting down something heavy after a long walk. Not dramatic. Just relief. Esther listened. She nodded. "You did right," she said simply. "I thought there would be more left," Maya said. "When I saw him, I thought some part of me would feel something I was not expecting. There is nothing wrong with having nothing left for a man who spent everything you had," Esther said. Maya sat with that, and then she said quietly, "I am going to tell him tomorrow, Mom, that I love him. I am going to go into that office, and I am going to tell him." Esther looked at her. "That's my girl," she said, in the tone that said she had known since the airport. Maya laughed, small and real and tired in the way of someone who has been carrying something for a long time and can finally see where to put it down. She walked into Sungmin's office the next morning with everything she had been holding arranged in her chest like words she had finally memorized. She had rehearsed it in the car. She had rehearsed it in the corridor. She had rehearsed it standing outside his door for a full 30 seconds before she pushed it open. She walked in. He looked up, and she felt the room before she understood it. The look on his face was professional. Not cold, not cruel, nothing she could call unkind. Just the specific temperature of a man who has built glass between himself and something that causes him pain and is standing on the managed side of it. He listened to her begin the security report, with the careful attention of a CEO who needed the information. He said she had done excellent work. He said she should take the full analysis to Director Sang-woo. He said she should see it through to the end, because it sounded serious. That was all. No smile arriving before he had decided it should. No shift in the quality of the air when she was in it. No particular quality of attention. Just work. Just the courteous professional distance of a man who has made a decision about his own exposure and is holding to it. She stood in his doorway for a moment after he turned back to his screen. The words she had rehearsed were still in her chest. They had not gone anywhere. They were just sitting in a room that was the wrong temperature for them, and she could not make herself release them into it. She turned. She went back to her office. She sat down. She did not spiral. She did not decide she had been right to be afraid all along. She did not build a story about men and their consistency and what it all proved. She sat with it for exactly the amount of time it took to feel it fully, and then she went back to work. Because there was important work to do and she was paid well to do it, and Maya Carter did not abandon important work because she was hurting. She never had. She took the full analysis to Director Choi Sang-woo. She walked him through the data, the pattern of the breach, the architectural precision of the targeting, the sequence of attempts that could only be mapped by someone who knew where the map led before they started. Sang-woo's face went through several things. "This is really coming from inside," he said quietly. "Yes," Maya said. They looked at each other. On the other side of Seoul, Yoona Shin was back at her desk, and she was wearing the face she wore when things were fine, and she had decided they were going to continue to be fine. Ji-ho had been glad to see her. He had not made a production of it, which she appreciated. He had simply looked up from his desk when she walked in and said, "Good morning, Yoona," and she had said good morning, and that had been enough for both of them. She was almost at the door of his office when he said her name. She turned. He was holding his phone toward her across the desk. The specific angle of someone who is not sure how you are going to react and wants to give you the option of controlling your face before you process what you are seeing. She walked back. She looked at the phone, the photograph of Sebastian on one knee, Maya standing above him. A coffee shop she did not recognize. Yuna's face did something in approximately 2 seconds that she would not have been able to fully describe. It moved through understanding and landed somewhere considerably colder. "I think he is playing me," she said. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she hated it. She hated it specifically because it confirmed that she had felt something real enough to crack over, and she had very much hoped that was not the case. The tears came before she could stop them, and she was furious with herself for each one. Ji-ho was on his feet immediately. "I do not need anyone making you feel this way," he said. and his voice had the quiet edge she had heard him use exactly twice in her life. Both times when someone had done something to her that he had decided required a response. That is exactly why he is no longer working here. He put his arms around her and she stood rigid for a moment, the way she always stood rigid when anyone tried to comfort her. And then she let herself stop standing rigid because she was tired, and her brother was her brother. I gave him the chance to make it right, Jiho said quietly. If this is how he makes it right, then he was not my friend. He has not been for a long time. Yuna sat down. She cried for a few minutes. Real tears. The kind that you do not get from situations that do not mean anything. The kind that arrived specifically because something you had been telling yourself did not matter had apparently been mattering for longer than you noticed. Then something shifted. She needed to know why. Not from Jiho. Not from a photograph. She needed to look at him directly. She had never in her life allowed someone to make a fool of her without understanding exactly how they had done it, and sitting in this office was not going to give her that understanding. She stood. Jiho watched her. He did not stop her. You did not stop Yuna when she decided to move. You got out of the way, and you trusted that she was going to do whatever she needed to do, and that she was going to be fine on the other side of it because she always was. She stormed out of Jiho's office. She knew exactly where she was going. She was going to stand in front of him. She was going to look Sebastian Reyes directly in the face, and she was going to ask him why. Not because she needed his permission to feel what she felt. Not because an explanation was going to change anything about the photograph, or the tears she had just cried in her brother's office, which she was still furious about. But because Yuna Shin had never in her life allowed someone to make a fool of her, and Sebastian had just tried to make a fool of her. The drive was not calm. She replayed his apology the entire way. Every word of it. She ran it back and heard it differently. The way he had agreed with her immediately, which had disarmed her because she had been ready for argument, an argument she could handle. The way he had not offered reasons, which had felt like humility, and which she understood now, was the calculation of a man who knew that reasons could be pulled apart, but sincerity performed at the right temperature could not. The way he had held her gaze when he said, "Who I actually love, is standing directly in front of me." She had almost found the lie. She had been right there, and she had let herself not find it, because some part of her had been sitting in that apartment for over a week, wanting exactly that conversation. And when you want something enough, you start making allowances in your own evidence. She knew this about herself. She had always known it was her one weakness, and she was furious, specifically and precisely furious, that he had found it. She parked outside his building. She got out. She walked toward the entrance with everything she intended to say already arranged. She had the words. She had the composure. She had 29 years of being exactly who she was, in rooms where people had badly underestimated her, and she had every intention of using all of it. And then she heard his voice. She stopped walking. He was around the side of the building, on the phone. And the tone reached her before the words did, and it was wrong in a way that landed in her body immediately, because she had heard Sebastian use many voices, and this was none of them. Not the charm voice. Not the authority voice. Not the specific warmth he deployed when he wanted something from someone who had something worth wanting. This was smaller than all of those. This was a man speaking with the careful deference of someone talking to a person who holds something he cannot afford to lose. She did not move. She stood where she was, and she listened. He was asking about a limousine. He said he had done his part. He said it ought to be worth it. And his voice had the edge of a man who was performing patience over a frustration he was not entirely managing. And then he said he had sacrificed his job. Yuna stood very still. He said he had sacrificed his job and a girl. A girl, she thought to herself. The word hit her somewhere below the ribs and just sat there. Not Yuna Shin. Not the woman he had stood in the doorway of yesterday with his eyes doing the thing that eyes do when they have learned that holding a gaze at the right moment reads as love. Not the woman whose brother had given him a position and whose family name opened every door in this city worth opening. Not any of that. A girl. A cost he had already calculated and already written off and already moved past on the way to whatever actually mattered to him. She heard him say he needed to make sure he didn't kneel for nothing. She heard him call Ha-Ayun in a very respectful manner. She heard the way he softened his voice when he spoke, aimed at whoever was on the other end of that call, the same register, the exact same register he had used with her, and she understood with the cold, complete clarity of a woman who has just watched a magic trick from behind the curtain that the register was not for her. It had never been for her specifically. It was just the voice he used to keep women manageable. She had been manageable. He had needed her manageable, and she had stood in her doorway and let herself be managed and called it strength because she had said she needed time. She had cried over this man this morning. She had sat in her brother's office and cried, and been furious at herself for crying, and the reason she had been furious was that crying meant it was real for her, and she had very much hoped it was not real. But it had been real. What she felt had been real. She walked back to her car. Not running. Walking. The way she walked when something inside her had gone past the place where urgency lived and arrived somewhere colder and considerably more dangerous. She got in. She sat with her hands in her lap, and the sole afternoon outside the window, and the specific quiet of a woman who came for answers, and received something she did not expect, and is now deciding what to do with it. She did not need to knock anymore. She did not need to look him in the face and ask him why, because she had just heard the why in real time, and it was worse and cleaner and more useful than anything he could have said to her face. He had a plan. He was being paid for it. The apology at her door was just him being manipulative, and the kneeling in the coffee shop had been just a task to him. He had the effrontery to call her a girl. She started the car. She was going to destroy him. Not because she was heartbroken, though the heartbreak was there and she was going to sit with it later when she was alone and let it be what it was. Not because she was angry, though the anger was there too, clean and cold and entirely focused. Because Yuna Shin had just heard herself called a girl by a man who had been begging on her doorway, and she was not going to let that go. Right now, she needed Maya Carter. She pulled out into the Seoul afternoon, and she drove. Maya was at home telling her mother about the cold morning with Sungmin when the doorbell rang. She had been describing the glass, the specific quality of Sungmin's distance, and how it had felt to walk into that office with everything arranged and walk out with none of it said. She was not catastrophizing. She was just being honest about how it had felt, and what it had cost her, and the specific unfairness of having finally been ready, and finding that the moment had moved. Esther was listening in the way she listened to things that required full attention. The doorbell rang. Maya opened it. And then she stood there for a moment, because the person standing in her doorway was the last person she had any rational reason to be opening her door to. Yuna Shin. In her doorway. In Seoul. At her apartment. Looking like a woman who had come to say something, and had decided on the drive over exactly what that something was going to be. What do you want? Maya said. How did you even find? I am rich, Yuna said simply. I can find anyone. And then her eyes moved past Maya into the apartment, and landed on Esther, standing in the kitchen. And something shifted in her face. She bowed. A small, clean, proper bow, the kind that was genuine rather than performed. And it surprised everyone in the room. Okay, Maya said, turning back to her. What exactly are you doing at my... Enough, Yuna said. Not loud. Final. The word that ended the sentence before it needed to finish. Enough with the hate. You hate me. I hate you. But I hate Sebastian considerably more than I hate you. And he hates you considerably more than he hates me. She looked at Maya directly. So here we both are. Maya looked at her. Sebastian apologized to me 2 days ago, she said carefully. We have moved on. Whatever you are here for, it is not going to work. Yuna was quiet for a moment. And then she said quietly, almost to herself, as though the pieces were settling in real time. It was all staged. A little louder. He is playing everyone. No one means anything to him. No one has ever meant anything to him. Maya looked at her with the expression of a woman who recognizes territory. Let me guess. He cheated on you as well. The smile at the corner of her mouth was not unkind. Just the specific recognition of a woman who has been where someone else is standing. Listen to me, Yuna said. She pulled out her phone. She turned it toward Maya. My brother took this picture this morning. He apologized to you publicly, in a coffee shop, for a reason. And the reason was to make this image exist. She watched Maya look at it. He is working with someone named Ha-eun. The name landed in the room. Maya's head came up. She looked at her mother without meaning to. Ha-eun, she said. Ha-eun is Sungmin's ex. The kitchen was completely quiet. Have you noticed anything different? Yuna said carefully. Since Sebastian apologized to you? Sungmin became distant, Esther said. She said it from the kitchen. Simply. Quietly. The way she said things that she had been observing for a while, and had been waiting for the right moment to place. Maya sat down slowly. She sat down, and the whole thing arranged itself. All the pieces that had been sitting separately came together with the specific clarity of someone who spent her professional life reading patterns. Ha Eun had needed a photograph. She had needed something that would fracture Sungmin's trust. She had sent Sebastian to Maya because Sebastian was exactly the kind of man who would do anything for a profit. She had made sure there was a camera there when he did, and Sungmin had seen it and gone cold. And Maya had walked into his office the next morning ready to change everything and found glass instead. There is more to this, Yuna said. You are one step, Maya. Sebastian is being paid for something. Whatever is happening is bigger than your relationship with Sungmin. Why are you helping me? Maya said calmly. Because you and I are victims to a man whose heart is so cold, it could turn a river to ice. And no one messes with me and goes, Yuna was saying when Maya's phone rang. It was Director Sung-woo. She answered. He said she needed to come to the office. He was there with Sung-min. Her heart did something complicated. She looked at Yuna. Something she had never expected to feel for this woman arrived in her chest without announcement. Quietly. Completely. Thank you, she said. She meant it all the way down. Someone wanted to divide us. And we were falling for it. Yuna nodded. She told Maya to see it through, and to make sure Sebastian understood what it meant to have made an enemy of Yuna Shin by mistake. She bowed to Esther again. She left. Maya grabbed her bag. Esther watched her go. She walked into that office and she did not hesitate. She had made the decision in the car. She had made it in the kitchen when Esther said he became distant. She had made it every day for the last 3 months, when she had been walking around with a love she was too frightened to put somewhere real. And this was the moment, this exact moment, where it was going into the only place it made sense. Sung-min was standing near the window talking to Director Sang-woo when she walked in. He looked up. The glass was still there. She could see it. She crossed the room. She reached him, and she kissed him. In front of Director Choi Sang-woo and the Seoul Evening behind the window and whoever else the universe had decided should witness this. It was not a small kiss. It was the kiss of a woman who has made a decision and is done apologizing for making it, done hedging it, done making it smaller than it was to fit inside a space she had not yet decided was safe. She was done with all of that. Sung-min went completely still. She pulled back. She looked at him directly. I love you, she said, against his lips, straight into his eyes. He stared at her. He looked like a man who had been holding something together with considerable effort for a considerable amount of time and had just been told he could put it down. He did not say anything. He pulled her back into something that was longer and deeper, and that Director Choi Sang-woo addressed by looking with great interest at a point somewhere above both their heads for several seconds. When it ended, Sung-min finally spoke. I thought, he said. He pulled out the picture and held it toward her. His voice had the specific quality of jealousy and disgust combined. Both of them real, neither of them performed. I thought you were back with him. Maya looked at the picture. She looked at it for a moment. Sebastian and Ha-eun are trying to break us apart, she said. She told him everything. Yuna at the door. The phone call Yuna had overheard. Ha-eun's name landing and what it connected to. She told him that the coffee shop had been a performance designed to produce exactly that image, and that the image had been sent to him, and it had worked exactly the way it was designed to work. The apology was fake, she said. They both just wanted an incriminating and suspicious image that they know would work because he's my ex. Sung-min looked at her. He kissed her again. The director coughed. They separated. Slightly. We still have, Sang-woo said, with the patience of a man who had decided he was going to maintain his dignity, regardless of what was happening in the room around him. A very serious breach. And as Maya identified, it is coming from inside this company. Sung-min looked at Maya. You two are the only ones I can trust, he said. Maya felt this land in a place that was entirely separate from the romance of the last 5 minutes. It landed in a place of pure pride. He had called her in. Even when he thought she was going back to Sebastian. Even while that picture was sitting on his phone and his heart was breaking over it. Even then he had called her in. He had trusted her with his company. That was not something Sebastian Reyes had ever done. That was not something Sebastian Reyes had ever been capable of. They worked through the night. All 3 of them. coffee and screens, and the particular focused silence of people doing something that mattered. The director, with his documentation. Maya running the analysis from a different entry point than she had used before. Sungmin with his knowledge of the architecture, the decisions that had been made in the building of the system, the places where a person who had been present during those decisions would know to look. The breach led them inward, and inward, and inward, until at 2:47 in the morning the name appeared on the screen. Min Yae-oh. Sungmin sat back in his chair. The room was very quiet. He sat there, and he looked at the name, and he let the full weight of it arrive. He did not want to believe it, but he did not rush it. He did not try to explain it away. He just sat with it and felt it settle into him in the specific way that betrayals from close quarters settle. Not like a shock. Like a weight that had always been there and you had simply not known you were carrying it. Min Jae had known Maya would go to the coffee shop, because he was the one who had told her to close the breach. He had been the one who framed the urgency of it. And he had known she would go to that specific coffee shop because Sungmin had told him Esther was coming to see Maya. And with a task like that, she'd need somewhere quiet to work. And the coffee shop was her place. Min Jae knew this too, because Sungmin told him everything. He had said it in the car, on the way somewhere. The kind of thing you say to a best friend, because a best friend is the person you say those things to without thinking about it. Min Jae had listened. He had taken that information, and he had given it to someone who needed it. But why? Sungmin had always thought Min Jae disliked Ha-eun. He had said so. Not once. Many times. With the specific disdain of a person who genuinely found someone problematic. He had been the person Sungmin talked to about Ha-eun when things were difficult. He had listened and agreed, and offered the kind of perspective that a friend who shared your assessment would naturally offer. He had been performing all of it. Sungmin did not shout. He did not break anything. He sat with the name on the screen and the silence of it, and he went very quiet in the specific way that is worse than shouting and harder to come back from. We need to know why, Maya said quietly. We need to know how long, Sungwoo said. We need to know everything, Sungmin said. They watched. Carefully. Patiently. For 4 days they monitored without intervening. They watched the communications between Min Jae and Ha-eun accumulate on their screens with the quality of something that had been going on for a long time before anyone was looking. And what they found was this. Ha-eun and Min Jae were lovers, had been lovers for a long time. The communication between them was intimate in the specific way of people who have been inside something together for long enough that the business and the personal had dissolved into each other. They had been lovers when Ha-eun was dating Sungmin. Sungmin sat with this in his office one evening, after Sangwoo had gone home, and Maya had gone to get them both coffee, and he was alone with the data on the screen. He sat with it, and he turned it over, and he looked at every angle of it. He understood, for the first time, why he had never been able to love Ha-eun. He had searched for it honestly. He had shown up. He had tried. And there had been nothing. Not a refusal to feel. Just an absence. The specific absence that arrives when something is wrong in a way you cannot articulate. He understood now what had been wrong. She had not been with him. Not entirely. Not the version of her that would have been available if she had been fully present. She had been somewhere else in ways that he had perceived and had not known how to name. He had attributed his inability to love her to himself, to some failure of his own capacity. He had felt guilty about it. He had tried to compensate for it. Min Jae had been there for every conversation he had about Ha-eun. Every doubt Sungmin had expressed. Every difficulty. Min Jae had listened and agreed, and offered the perspective of a loyal friend, and had been carrying this the whole time. He thought about the whiskey, about sitting in his office with his phone face down, and Min Jae walking in and sitting beside him. About pouring Min Jae a glass. About telling him how he felt. About Min Jae asking him to move on, and Sungmin saying, it would not be easy, because she worked for him, and he would see her every day. About Min Jae saying fire her. The suggestion had come and gone so quickly. It had been so easy to dismiss in the moment, as care, as a friend trying to fix a practical problem. He had not sat with it until now. If Maya was gone, the breach could continue indefinitely. If Maya was gone, there was no one in the company with the specific skill and the specific motivation to find what she had found. He had almost said yes. He had been sitting there heartbroken over a photograph that Min Jae had helped engineer, and he had almost said yes to the suggestion of the man who had engineered it. Sung Min sat with all of this. And then, he made his plan. The system files were not all equal. Sung Min knew his own architecture better than anyone. He knew what lived where. He knew which files were sensitive in the ordinary way, and which files belonged to clients for whom sensitivity was not a preference, but a requirement. Clients who operated in spaces where the word confidentiality was not a courtesy, where it was enforced by people who did not send legal correspondence. He secured everything that mattered. And then he left certain files accessible, not by accident. Deliberately, with care, in a way that would look, from the outside, exactly like the breach had worked. Exactly like Ha-eun and Min-jae had gotten what they had been working toward. He wanted them to celebrate. He wanted them to be certain they had won. He wanted them to be so full of their own certainty that it would not occur to them to look carefully at exactly what they were holding. Ha-eun called Min-jae the night the files came through. He arrived at her apartment, and they sat with the laptop between them, and they went through what they had. Sebastian was there. The number Ha-eun put forward as the blackmail figure made Sebastian go very still for a moment, and then begin doing the mathematics of his own share of it, with the visible effort of a man who has not done anything requiring mathematics in some time. "This changes everything," Ha-eun said. Her composure had a warmth in it that was not usually there. The warmth of someone who has been working towards something for a long time and can see it arriving. "Babe," Min-jae said. He was more careful than the other two. He had more to lose than the both of them. Their treachery was understandable, but his was going to be the real betrayal to Sung Min. "You know I will not be on your side when the negotiation happens. Sung Min has to believe I am on his side. If he suspects me before we have the payment, the whole thing unravels." "Baby," Ha-eun said, with the specific warmth she reserved for managing him. "I and Sebastian have this entirely handled. You stay in position. When we have the money, you come to me, and you do not have to go back." "How much exactly are we talking?" Sebastian said. Ha-eun smiled. With the client files Min-jae included in the breach, she said, "We will never need to think about money again. We could purchase his company with what he will pay to keep those files private." Min-jae looked at the laptop with the satisfaction of a man who had been patient for a long time and can see the patience ending. None of them checked the files. They had too much momentum and too much certainty, and the combination of those two things is one of the most reliable ways to walk directly into something you did not see coming. Nobody thought to look at who exactly those clients were. The meeting was called for a Thursday morning. Maya and Sung Min and director Sang-woo arrived first. They sat on one side of the conference table and did not speak very much. There was nothing left to say that had not already been said. Sang-woo had his documentation. Maya had her technical analysis printed and ordered. Sung Min had his plan and his stillness and the specific quality of calm that belongs to a man who knows exactly what is going to happen in the next hour and has already made his peace with all of it. Ha-eun arrived with Sebastian. She looked composed and expensive and entirely confident. The specific confidence of a woman who believes she holds every piece of leverage in the conversation and has not yet encountered any evidence to the contrary. She sat down and crossed her hands on the table and looked at Sung Min with the expression of a woman who has been planning this moment for months and intends to enjoy every second of it. Sebastian sat beside her and looked at Maya once, and then looked somewhere else entirely. Min-jae arrived last. He sat down on what he had decided was the neutral side of the table, the friend's side, the side of a man who was present to mediate a difficult conversation and protect his best friend's interests as best he could while remaining professionally uninvolved in the specifics. He arranged his face into the expression of concerned loyalty that he had been wearing for years in this building. He did not hold Sung Min's gaze for very long. 15 minutes into the meeting, the conference room door opened. 7 men came in. They moved with the specific economy of people who do not waste energy on anything that is not directly relevant to the task at hand. They sat along the wall, without being invited and without asking. They looked at the conference table with the patient attention of people who have somewhere to be, but are not in a hurry, because the thing they have come for is already in the room. Min-jae looked at them. Something moved through his face. "What is going on?" he said. Careful. Still performing. Still the concerned friend. Trying to understand a situation. Sung Min looked at him. "They are here," Sung Min said pleasantly, in the tone of a man explaining something straightforward. to ensure the confidentiality of their files, which was promised when they brought their business to my company. Min Jae went very still. Ha-eun looked at Sebastian. The architecture of her confidence was doing something complicated. I do not follow, Min Jae said. He was still trying. He was still on the wrong side of this table, and still wearing the face of the right side. What files specifically? The ones you included in the breach, Sungmin said. His voice had no heat in it at all. It was completely level. The ones that were supposed to give Ha-eun and Sebastian the leverage they needed to blackmail me. He looked at Ha-eun. The ones you were so certain you had. Silence. That cannot be possible, Min Jae said. And then he stopped. Because he had just used the word cannot, and the word cannot had just told everyone in the room exactly which side of this conversation he was actually on. Ha-eun looked at Sebastian. Sebastian had gone several shades paler than he had been 3 minutes ago. The concern I understand, Sungmin said, looking at Min Jae with the full quiet weight of everything he knew and everything he felt, and everything he had decided not to perform right now. Because you were careful to include only clients you believed were not in this category. He paused. It turns out theirs were involved, and the men along that wall are extremely serious about the confidentiality of their work. It is not negotiable. It is not something they send correspondence about. He turned slightly toward the 7 men. These 3 people, he said, were attempting to use your client files to blackmail me into paying to keep them silent. He looked at Min Jae. And this man, who has been my best friend for years, who I told everything, who I trusted with every part of this company. He is the one who gave them the access. Min Jae looked at him across the table. He looked at him with the face finally stripped of everything that had been on it for years. Sungmin, he said. Just his name. Quiet. All the performance finally exhausted. Please. The harshest looking of the 7 men spoke. Traitors are not supposed to beg, he said, in Korean, with the unhurried certainty of a man who has said this before. We do not operate like that here. Min Jae looked at the flash drive in Ha-eun's hands. We will give it back, he said. We will give all of it back. We already have everything we need, the man said simply. He was not looking at Min Jae. He was looking at Ha-eun and Sebastian, with the attention of men who have already completed their assessment. Sungmin looked at Maya. How? He said quietly. Did we ever date people like this? Maya looked across the table. At Ha-eun. At Sebastian. At Min Jae, who was looking at the surface of the table and could not seem to make himself look anywhere else. People make mistakes, she said. I guess. They are our mistakes. The flash drive came down on the table. Ha-eun had placed it there with fingers that were not entirely steady. Sebastian had pushed it forward without being asked. Quickly. Before anything else was said. Min Jae had not moved. You touched property that was not yours to touch, one of the 7 men said. One way or another that will be settled. The guards along the wall moved at the signal. Sebastian looked at Maya. He was begging, first with his eyes and then out loud. He called her name. Maya, please. And she looked at him with the complete and final absence of anything she owed him. She was done with this man a whole lifetime ago. They were removed from the conference room. The door closed. The room was very quiet. The sacking letter went to Min Jae that same day. Formal. Legal. The kind of document that was complete in itself and required nothing further from either party. That evening, Sungmin sat with his parents and told them everything. He told them about Ha-eun and Min Jae and how long it had been going on. He told them why he had never been able to love Ha-eun and why he now understood what had been wrong in a way he had not been able to articulate before. He told them about the woman who had spent the night in his office closing a breach and had been so precise and so relentless about it. His parents sat with it. His mother was quiet for a long time. She thought about the woman she had been reluctant about. The woman from a different background in a different country who her son had insisted on. She thought about what that woman had done. How she had found the threat when everyone was looking in the wrong direction. How she had sat across from 3 people who had been trying to destroy her relationship without a single visible sign of fear. She is good for you, his mother said. She said it simply, without elaboration. It was enough. 3 months later, Maya Carter and Sung Min Kwan were married. The ceremony was quiet and full, and had in it every single person who had earned their place in it. Esther in the front row with her reading glasses on top of her head, where she had put them to read the order of service and forgotten to move them. She was crying before the ceremony started, and was entirely unapologetic about it. Jiho at a table near the front who had looked at Maya when she walked in and nodded once with the specific quiet approval of a man who had watched everything that had happened and had drawn his own conclusions. And somewhere near the back, Yuna Shin, who had arrived alone and sat quietly and left before the reception ended, because she had done the right thing for her own reasons and did not require acknowledgement for it. She bowed to Esther on her way out. Esther bowed back. Something passed between them that neither of them needed to name. Everyone who needed to approve did. Everyone who did not was no longer present. Not through exclusion. Simply because the world had arranged itself the way it sometimes does, when enough truth has been told and enough time has passed. The rumor reached Sungmin some months later. Minjae and Ha-eun and Sebastian Reyes were working as domestic staff for one of the mafia clients whose files they had attempted to weaponize. The terms of their arrangement were not comfortable. The work was not pleasant. There was no defined end date. Sungmin did not go looking to confirm it. He had other things to do. A year after the wedding, the twins arrived. Two of them. Small and absolutely certain of themselves from the very first moment in the way that some babies are certain. As though they have arrived already knowing something about the world that the rest of us have had to learn slowly. Sungmin was there for every single thing. Not because anyone had asked him to be, because there was nowhere else on the planet he had any interest in being. He loved Maya in the specific way she had always deserved to be loved. Not as a resource, not as a useful thing, as a person, as the most interesting, most alive, most completely herself person he had ever shared a room with. As the woman who had sat in the snow outside a closed door with nothing, and had stood up and kept going and kept going and kept going, until she had built something worth standing inside. One evening, they were on the balcony. The Seoul evening was doing what Seoul evenings did. The city below them, in its layers of light and noise, and the particular endless aliveness of a place that had never once agreed to stop. The twins were inside, asleep, with the complete and committed unconsciousness of children who have worn themselves out entirely on the business of growing and existing and being entirely themselves. Sungmin and Maya stood at the railing. She had her drink. He had his. The evening was between them, and the city was below them, and for a while neither of them said anything, because there was a kind of silence that did not need to be filled. He looked at her. She was looking at the city with the expression of a woman who has arrived somewhere she did not know she was headed, and has found it is exactly where she was always supposed to be. The expression of someone who can see the whole length of the road behind her now, and can hold all of it, the difficult parts and the good parts, and the parts that cost her, without it overwhelming the view of where she is standing. "Do you remember?" he said quietly. "When someone so dumb kicked you out." She smiled. There was something in the smile that was partly pain, a very old pain. The specific kind that does not go away but changes its shape over enough time until it is no longer a wound, but a scar. And a scar is just proof that the body knew how to heal itself, even when you were not sure it was going to. "That was when my story changed," she said. "That was the beginning of everything good in my life." He looked at her. At the woman who had come around the corner of a grocery store aisle and hit him with her cart and looked up at him in the one unguarded second before either of them had remembered to be composed and had been. In that single second, so completely herself that something in his chest had done something he had not given it permission to do. "I loved you," he said. "From the first day I set my eyes on you." She looked at him. "In that grocery store," he said. "When you hit me with your cart and looked up at me like I was the last thing you had been expecting to find. I told myself it was nothing." He shook his head slightly. "It was not nothing. It was never nothing." He reached out and touched her face. The way he had always touched her. Carefully. Deliberately. Like whatever he was doing was worth the full attention of doing it properly. "I cannot even imagine," he said quietly, "that someone would meet you and feel anything other than what I felt." He kissed her forehead. She leaned into his hand, and the Seoul night continued around them, warm and indifferent, and entirely theirs. The twins asleep inside. The city below going on without them the way cities go on, loudly and endlessly and completely unconcerned with the small and significant things that happen on the balconies above it. She thought about the snow, about the door that would not open, about the car parked across the street and the man inside it, who had been telling himself for 10 minutes that it was simply not his business. She thought about how close she had come to never having any of this. She leaned into his hand and let the Seoul evening hold them both. If this story moved you the way I know it did, then share it today with someone who needs to hear it. Because when this story started, Maya Carter was sitting in the snow outside a closed door with nothing left in her hands. And now she is ending her story with a man that loves her and a happy family. If you enjoyed this story, smash that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Because we make stories like this every single week, and you absolutely do not want to miss what is coming next. And if you want to get our free ebook, How to Attract a High-Value Man Without Chasing, don't forget to click the link in the description below and join our waitlist. We will see you in the next one.